Here is a list. This is a list of reasons why I have total despair about the situation, um, both my personal situation and the situation for all people with ME/CFS. Um, One, the fight to get adequate funding from the NIH is extremely unlikely to succeed. Our community is too sick to fight the NIH aggressively without the help of many healthy allies and a very organized movement. If these things did not materialize over the past 30 years, then it is unlikely to suddenly materialize now unless there is some huge change I am missing. The NIH will never fund this illness adequately out of the kindness of their hearts. Our community is way too divided about what tactics to use, whether it's okay to be aggressively political in our activism, even if we're strong enough physically to do this fight and win it. There's like nowhere near enough agreement or organization. Two, even scientists who are nominally on our side do not adequately listen to patient input about clues and angles to consider in this illness. Two examples are the lack of response to looking into environmental factors in this illness and the lack of response to looking into craniocervical instability and other structural issues swiftly. Despite cluster outbreaks that occurred in peculiar geographical patterns, suggesting an environmental factor as well as infectious, and thousands of patients reporting location's effect on their health and asking researchers to look into it, there has been perhaps one single poorly done study on environmental factors out of thousands of studies on ME/CFS. I'm referring to the Joseph Brewer mold study. 3. If there is an environmental cause to craniocervical instability, correcting it surgically may be necessary, but probably not sufficient. I think an environmental cause is most likely because many of the people with ME diagnosed with this do not have a history of head trauma or connective tissue disorder. And many of them have environmental sensitivities. Also, even if they have hypermobile EDS, we do not have the genes for that isolated, and it's quite possible environmental factors play a major role in that illness as well. HEDS doesn't explain the difference between pathological and non-pathological hypermobility. This is why I consider my personal situation hopeless. I could surgically correct my craniocervical instability, but if researchers aren't investigating environmental causes of this, it's only buying a little time. The reasons for thinking there are environmental causes are probably worth a whole separate video. 4. If I'm right about the possible environmental causes, we likely have a very, very small window of time to solve this puzzle and save people with ME. Anecdotally, people who are sensitive to environmental toxins report places that were good going bad very quickly, especially in the last 5 years. Sometimes this is associated with observations of specific, tangible, known changes, like fires and fire retardant usage, increased development, or military bombing exercises, which produce particulate pollution that may be harmful. Sometimes the causes of these places going bad is totally unknown. But what we do know is that a plethora of measures of environmental pollution and climate change are worsening exponentially. If there are any environmental pollutants that have a role in ME/CFS, which I believe is likely, then it follows that general trends of speedy increases in particulate pollution of all kinds, metals and petroleum byproducts in the food, water, and air, increases in harmful fungi, etc., are not irrelevant to whatever the environmental problem in ME/CFS is. We may not be able to identify the specific cause of the location's effect on a mass spectrometer, but it seems more likely than not that whatever it is getting worse, because far more environmental measures are getting worse than are getting better. I would bet that the environmental pollution that is the known unknown in ME/CFS is something that will become devastating to humans before the most dramatic climate change problems, such as cities underwater, occur. So it would follow that we may have far less time to solve the problem of ME/CFS than climate change, and yet we have a tiny fraction of the budget allocated for the former. How is this a fight that can be won?